Hi everyone, there will be no bookish video on my channel this week because I've been having a couple of camera issues and I'm hoping it'll all be sorted before next week, so I'll have everything back to normal. But I thought that in the meantime I would upload something that I've been asked for a couple of times, and obviously if you've watched my channel a fair bit you will know that I put out there sometimes that I believe that I live in a potentially haunted house, and I'm always looking for outside sort of ideas about what these situations could be, because I'm not entirely convinced myself that it is haunted, but I just don't know. It's very weird. And as I've said before, I've always been quite a rational person, and so all of these occurrences have really thrown me. So when I initially uploaded a video about how I lived in a haunted house, I did mention that my husband at first was extremely sceptical, and he used to work away during the week and he would only come back at the weekends, and that went on for the first couple of years that we lived here, and so he didn't see a lot of what was going on. And I did say that at one point he started to experience things himself, and he started to sort of come round to the fact that something was a little bit off. And I've been asked a couple of times what the first occurrence was that my husband was sort of privy to. As I've said previously, when we first moved here, nothing happened, nothing out of the ordinary, and one day I went out for a walk with my dogs, and when I came back all of the cupboard doors were open, and that was sort of the start of it, really. And so little things were happening, some not so little things, but things were happening pretty constant from there for a while, and then we started having what I've said, the ebbs and flows of activity. So we have a little sort of spike, and then nothing happens for a few months, and all of a sudden you'll get a week where just loads of things happen, and then quiet again. But at first, for the first few months after the cupboard doors opened, things were pretty full on. Things happened a lot. It was almost as if a switch had been flicked. Yeah, but then we began to have the ebbing and flowing of activity. And so it was during one of the sort of the low times where it came time to register my daughter for nursery. Now, we had moved to this house in Scotland from Norfolk. I'm not originally from Norfolk, but we were living in Norfolk for a while. So from Norfolk, we had packaged everything up and we had moved up here, and everything was going well. And my daughter had needed a birth certificate to register her at the doctors and things and the dentists when I first moved here, so I'd used a birth certificate for that. And I have a location in the downstairs area where I keep all of the important documents, which includes things like the birth certificates or any sort of paperwork for things such as car information, or just, you know, general things that you tend to need that are quite important. So her birth certificate was in there, along with my birth certificate, passports, things like that, in the sort of documents box. And I used the birth certificate to register my daughter for her first year at nursery here. However, I was then told that due to sort of whether it was a nursery policy or whatever it was, because I'd never heard of this before, I don't know if it's a Scottish thing or whether it's just that nursery, but I needed to re-register her for a second year at nursery, but I needed to re-provide all the documentation and things. So for some reason I had to take her birth certificate back to the nursery to prove to them that she was still the same person. Why she would have changed, I don't know. I didn't question it at the time. It seems pretty stupid now. But I went to get the birth certificate to take it, but the birth certificate wasn't where I'd left it. And it wasn't in the documents at all. So I called my husband and asked, have you used the birth certificate? Have you needed the birth certificate for anything? Have you been registering her anywhere, or where's the birth certificate gone? He had no clue. He'd never used it. So obviously he's telling me I've lost it. I'm telling him he's lost it, because I knew I'd put it back in the documents drawer. So we had a bit of toing and froing, and then he came home at the weekend and we took the house apart bit by bit. We went through all of the cupboards and everything where anything might be stored, and we don't have a lot of storage and we don't have a lot of random crap really. So there wasn't a great deal of things to sort through, but we went through everything and her birth certificate just wasn't there. So I'm in the bath. I was editing my video, just ready to upload it before I jumped in the bath, scrubbed all my face, got into some these are my pyjamas that I'm supposed to be putting on when I get out of the bath. But as usual, whenever I film anything in this house or film anything to do with ghosts, half the footage is deleted. I don't even know how, off my iPhone. So now I'm having to jump in and say, I'm not sure what's gone. I'm just hoping that this is going to cover what was missing. But I think what was missing was that I said that a birth certificate was missing, and so I had to reorder a new birth certificate. I had to call up where she'd been born, order a new one, pay for it, register her with the new one, and then put the new one in with the documents. A year later, or a year and a half later, or whatever, me and my husband decided that we would go through other documents and things that we'd had stored, boxes and things that we'd had from various moves around the place. And so we decided to set aside one day to go through everything that we had stored in the attic. And then I think the story continues. I'm hoping I'm not going to have to jump back in here again. So we set aside a day where we were going to open everything, get everything out and sort it all out. And there was a lot of it. There was a lot of boxes from the various different moves that we'd done, because we moved a fair few times before we bought this property. We moved up and down the country. We moved country to country. We lived in Germany for a while. A few of the boxes had come from my first house when I moved out from before I was even married. And I knew that they were the same boxes because they were boxes that my friend had written random stuff on them in, and they hadn't even been opened. So there was things like stuffed toys and random things that I hadn't opened since I moved out years prior. So I picked a particular box that hadn't been opened in a decade, brought it out, decided to open it up and have a look. And within that box there was random old letters, emails that I'd printed out from my teenage angsty years, paperwork from when I was first doing my driving test. So I was going through them, getting ready to bin everything. And it was still all sellotaped up with the sellotape I can remember borrowing from my dad when I lived back in Newcastle, and it had the same like the huge masking tape. He had this huge masking tape that I borrowed, so I can remember masking taping it all up in my house. And then halfway through this pile of stuff that hadn't been opened in a decade was a familiar looking folder, and I was the only one who'd opened the box, and I was the only one going through the box. As I went through and pulled out this folder, the folder was my daughter's birth certificate. So this was a box that had been packaged up and packed about 6 years before my daughter was even born. But somehow a birth certificate had managed to get out of my documents box and into this sealed box in my attic. That was the first time my husband experienced anything particularly weird in this house. I still have no explanation for it. He doesn't. And I would love to know if any of you have had any explanation for it. The camera just glitched. Okay. I'm going to go now before I incur some sort of wrath, but do let me know if you've experienced anything like this yourself, or if you have any explanation as to how the birth certificate got into there. And before you say it, my husband wouldn't have been playing a joke on me and hiding it for 2 years or a year or whatever, and then hiding it in a box. There's no way that would have happened. I would have noticed him going in the attic for one. So if you've got any explanations, or you know how that might have happened, do let me know, because it is a mystery. So hopefully we'll be back next week with some more book videos, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.